Following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, June 4th. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak. And we'll look to our weather forecast. Partly sunny and pleasant today, high of 79. Mainly clear tonight. Northern lights may be visible. And I heard on the radio this morning that the northern lights should be visible between 11 and 1 this evening. Low of 60 today. Partly sunny tomorrow, high of 80. Saturday, a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. Storms can bring flooding, downpours, and localized damaging wind gusts. And Sunday is also clouds yielding to sun, high of 73. Our sky watch, our sunrise was at 5:38, and the sun will set this evening at 8:50. And our weather trivia, who invented the lightning rod? Oh, we all know that one. That's Ben Franklin. And we'll go on to our front page news. Lawmakers plan for one-year moratorium on data centers. State lawmakers are planning to enact a one-year moratorium on data centers in New York amid concerns over increased rates, impact on the electric grid, and the effect on the environment. The legislation, which was facing strong labor union opposition, would be among the highest profile measures to pass the state legislature before members of the Assembly and Senate conclude their annual session on Friday. The bill, if ultimately approved by Governor Kathy Hochul, could delay plans by the Stream Data Center to construct a 500-megawatt data center complex in the Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Park, or STAMP, in the Genesee County town of Alabama. Other Western New York projects include plans for data centers at the former Tonawanda Coke brownfield site along the Niagara River and at the site of the former Sugar Hill Golf Course in the Chautauqua County town of Portland. The developer behind the $2 billion AI data center proposed for the former Tonawanda Coke brownfield site has asked the town of Tonawanda to pause its review of the project. That is because developer Riverview Innovation and Technology Campus doesn't know when it will find out whether Niagara Grid will service the project. RITC is waiting to get answers from the utility and from the entity that oversees the state's electric grid. On Tuesday, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie from the Bronx said the agreement to pass the moratorium followed conversations the Assembly and Senate had with stakeholders on data centers, which are used to power artificial intelligence. The legislation combines several bills, including an earlier proposal for a 3-year moratorium. Other proposals under consideration include 1. A resolution to allow mid-decade redrawing of boundaries for lawmakers and members of Congress is expected to pass and receive Hochul's support. Democrats who control both houses of the state legislature contend the measure is needed in the wake of redistricting efforts aided Republicans in other states such as Texas. The change requires a constitutional amendment which needs approval from 2 separately elected state legislatures and voters. 2. A bill to make Erie County its own judicial district, which passed last year, only to be vetoed by Hochul, could pass both houses before lawmakers depart Friday. The bill, co-sponsored by Assemblymember Jonathan Rivera from Buffalo and Deputy Senate Majority Leader Michael Gianaris from the Queens, is intended to increase diversity on the bench in upstate counties with large cities. It would make Erie County the 16th judicial district, Monroe County would be the 15th judicial district, Onondaga County would be the 14th judicial district. 3. A bill to lessen the amount of detailed information that litigants are now required to show if they want to continue with lawsuits against the state or municipalities under the state's Adult Survivors Act and Child Victims Act. Advocates for the change say some 1,800 cases are at risk of being dismissed due to a March 2025 Court of Appeals decision required heightened standards of information. The bill passed the Senate in May. 4. The proposed Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, a plastics reduction bill, would require companies with net incomes exceeding $5 million to cut their single-use plastic packaging by 30% over the next 12 years. The bill, backed by environmentalists, has support in the Senate, where it passed last year. Heastie said Tuesday that the bill lacked the sufficient votes to pass the Assembly, but did not rule out its passage if it gained more support. In a statement, the Genesee County Economic Development Center said the Stamp Data Center project could have shovels in the ground in a matter of weeks. It said it was already established as the center would not affect resident utility bills or water consumption, and that 3 studies on noise are ongoing. If this legislation passes and prevents this development from moving forward at this stage, it would be an egregious infringement on our local decision-making rights, it said. On Monday, environmentalists and a number of Democratic state lawmakers had called for the moratorium on data centers. Blair Horner, a longtime government watchdog with the New York Public Interest Research Group, said families living near data centers in Virginia have experienced round-the-clock vibrating of their homes. And he said it would have an impact on drinking water supplies and the state's energy grid. It makes perfect sense to figure stuff out first, to hit the pause button, he said. Hochul has said she wants any new data center to pay for its own power to offset the cost. On Wednesday, she told reporters in New York City that she continues to believe safeguards need to be built around data centers. I think that much more should be done to ensure that communities are benefiting enormously from this and that there's not a drain on the power sources in that area, which has been the case for too often, she said. I will look at this one-year moratorium in the context of also knowing that the status quo can't continue, that much more needs to be done to derive benefits if they are in the state of New York. Assemblymember Anna Kells, a Tompkins County Democrat who sponsored the initial moratorium bill, said the Great Lakes alone represent the largest freshwater surface water in the world. She said New York State has 95% of the surface freshwater in the U.S. Once contaminated, there is no going back, she said. There aren't data centers that can function very effectively and efficiently, cost-effectively in the northeast of the United States, given the dramatic temperature changes that we have and the high ranges of humidity that can function with the complete dry cooling that don't use water, which means they will be dumping chemicals back in our water. Kelly said that the moratorium was needed. Everyone knows government does not move quickly, she said. We are simply saying that we want to give it the chance to do its job. Assembly members Karen McCann of Williamsville, William Conrad of Tonawanda, Jonathan Rivera of Buffalo, Senators April Baskin of Buffalo, and Jeremy Zellner of Tonawanda are listed as co-sponsors of the bill. The New York State Pipe Trades Association, which represents plumbers, steam fitters, HVAC workers, and fire protection installers across the state, opposed the moratorium, saying data centers are essential for modern life. A prohibition on permits for data centers will ensure that our state does not remain competitive with other states in both economic development and job creation.
Iran hits Kuwait. U.S. also lashes out in Gulf flare-up. Gulf hostilities flared again on Wednesday as Iranian attacks on Kuwait damaged its airport and injured dozens, while the U.S. military carried out strikes near the Strait of Hormuz, with diplomacy to halt the war showing little sign of progress. Flights at Kuwait International Airport were suspended after an Iranian drone and missile attack damaged airport facilities and diplomatic missions, killing one person and injuring more than 60 others, Kuwaiti authorities and state media said. Kuwait Airways and Jazeera Airways later resumed flights, the Civil Aviation Authority stated. Earlier, Iranian media reported that Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards had attacked the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain and the U.S. Air Base, as well as a vessel identified as Panaya. U.S. Central Command denied its bases had been hit and said Iranian ballistic missiles failed to strike their targets in the region. CENTCOM said it had carried out a new round of defensive strikes in southern Iran, targeted missile launch sites and Iranian boats seeking to lay mines, and conducted strikes on Qasem Island near the Strait of Hormuz after attempted Iranian attacks. Iranian foreign minister later said in a post on X that his country's armed forces were conducting self-defense strikes on sites the U.S. is permitted to use to attack civilian shipping and violate the ceasefire. Any hostile act will be met with immediate decisive response, he added. Since the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran began on February 28th, Tehran has repeatedly attacked targets in the Gulf region home to U.S. military bases, hitting civilian and military targets. Hostilities have occasionally flared up in recent weeks, despite a ceasefire agreed in early April, as the U.S. has pushed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a route that handled roughly a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas shipments before the war. Last week, Iran and the U.S. signaled progress towards a tentative initial agreement to halt the war and reopen the strait, but the two sides have yet to sign off on the deal, which would leave more complex negotiations for later. Moshe Rezari, military advisor to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, said Iran would not allow the U.S. to overreach either in negotiations or ceasefire arrangements. In a post on X, he warned that any aggression would be met with a barrage of missiles and drones. Another diplomatic advisor to the United Arab Emirates president said repeated attacks on Kuwait and Bahrain required a firm and cohesive Gulf response. The aggression does not target one country alone, but all of us, he wrote on X. Since mid-March, President Trump has repeatedly said he is close to a deal to end the fighting and pave way for negotiations on thorny issues, including the future of Iran's nuclear program. Tehran has conditioned a deal on an end to fighting in Lebanon. It also wants access to billions of dollars in oil revenues, waivers on sanctions on crude exports, a lifting of the U.S. blockade on its ports, and continued leverage over the strait. Trump, who is under pressure to bring down U.S. fuel prices while not making concessions to Iran, has said his top priority is to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Iran says its atomic program is for peaceful purposes. Trump said negotiations are continuing, though Iran's semi-official news agency said on Wednesday that Iran had not responded to the U.S. in recent days and that exchanges of text through intermediaries were suspended until Iran's conditions on Lebanon are met. In a podcast interview released on Wednesday, Trump said Iran had agreed to not have a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei was involved in negotiations. The war has killed thousands, mainly in Iran and Lebanon, while causing global economic pain by severely disrupting energy supplies and other shipping. It has also sparked the latest round of conflict between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah, with Israel pursuing its deepest incursion into Lebanon in 25 years. On Wednesday, Israeli drone strikes killed at least 6 people in southern Lebanon and targeted a car just south of Beirut. There was no immediate response from the Israeli military to Reuters' questions about the drone attacks. drone strikes, but the attack on the car appeared to mark the closest attack to Beirut since Trump asked Israel not to hit the Lebanese capital under a U.S.-mediated partial ceasefire announced on Monday. In his podcast comments, Trump acknowledged having called Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu crazy during a reportedly expletive-filled phone exchange over the fighting in Lebanon. At some point I said, "Bibi, we got to stop this. We've got to stop it," Trump said, referring to Netanyahu by his nickname. Netanyahu told CNBC that he and Trump sometimes had technical disagreements, but they agreed on the main issues concerning Iran.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour, and we will go to our editorial. Welcome departure. Henry Wojciech, the former president and CEO of Western Regional Off-Track Betting, has finally left the building, or at least the boardroom. This is a good development. He had overstayed his welcome. It's also positive news that long overdue legislation approved as part of the new state budget bars any former OTB officer from serving as a board member for 5 years, following the end of the officer's OTB tenure. It also blocks appointees waiting for their gaming license from participating as board members. Both are sensible reforms. Wojciech said he was heading for the door anyway due to his frustration that the State Gaming Commission had not yet approved his application for a license. That meant his effort to join the OTB board was hanging in limbo and left Niagara County without a voting board member. Lack of the gaming license meant Wojciech was unable to cast a vote, as his appointment to the board could not be made official. At April's OTB board meeting, he sat in the audience. His desire to return to the board raised obvious questions. The former CEO of OTB initially said he wanted to apply his organizational experience to service on the board. He has also claimed that he wanted to find out whether reports of mistreatment of long-standing OTB employees under the new regime were true. But his own tenure remains highly controversial. A recently released State Controller's Office audit critical of Wojciech found lax monitoring of costs and other financial mismanagement. He vigorously defends his management as a time that returned more money to its member municipalities from new sources of revenue. Western Regional OTB runs Batavia Downs and other gaming venues, but the audit found that expenses undermined these gains. The audit also cited failure in transparency, patronage hiring, and too much spending on perks for insiders. It was clear that Wojciech had to go, but he did not announce his exit until 2024, when then State Senator Tim Kennedy, a Buffalo Democrat, pushed through a change that introduced weighted voting for the Western Regional Board of Directors. As reported, Republicans from rural counties in the region had dominated the board, but under the new regulations, Democrats from Buffalo, Rochester, Erie County, and Monroe County took control of the board, a move GOP officials decried as a power play. Wojciech left what then appeared to be to many as a golden parachute worth $299,000. Byron Brown, a Democrat then serving as the mayor of Buffalo, replaced him, bringing along allies including former Deputy Mayor Steve Casey. Since then, there has been finger-pointing about who is trying to influence OTB employees. Regardless, clashes between the old boss and the new boss add unnecessary tension. The new restrictions on who is allowed to serve on OTB boards in New York offer clarity and establish an important safeguard against revolving door governance. It also sends a message to the old guard and to those currently in charge. The OTB is not a fiefdom or a political clubhouse. While there are signs that some past practices have been addressed, questions about operations and workplace culture should be examined on their merits. Openness and accountability are not optional. They are the minimum requirements if the OTB is to shake off past stigmas and move forward in a positive direction.
And another voice. Today written by Philip Glick, MD, Professor of Surgery at the Jacobs School of Medicine. And it is titled, "In Medicine, It's Critical to Know Business Too." For better or worse, the practice of medicine, and in this case, the practice of surgery, has become a business. In medical school and during surgical training programs, there is an emphasis on scientific, clinical, ethical, and psychomotor skill sets. But the curriculum is deficient in essential business skills, including leadership, finance, healthcare policy, human resources, big data, marketing, strategy, accounting, negotiations and contracts, governance, conflict resolution, recruitment and retention, just to name a few. In academic surgery, trainees and early career academic surgeons' professional goals are to become master surgeons, well-recognized teachers, and funded investigators. With these accomplishments, opportunities for leadership within university will be offered. Surgeons need to be smart, confident, and courageous in their practices. But clinical teaching and research accomplishments will not make them successful business leaders. They also need essential business skills. As a mid-career surgeon, I recognized my strengths and my weaknesses and got an MBA from the Kellogg School of Business. Upon completion of the degree, the UB Jacobs School of Medicine asked me to champion the MD-MBA dual degree program as its liaison between the School of Management and the medical school during that time. We graduated many MD-MBA graduates. Simultaneously, we started the accelerated MBA program for residents and fellows. Our chair, Dr. Steve Schwartzberg, recognized the importance of an MBA for our residents and started the UBMD Department of Surgery Plus program. Many of our graduating residents were launched on their careers in surgery with an MBA. Recently, I endowed a new UB lecture series focused on the business of surgery. On June 4th, Mark Talamini, Senior Vice President of Northwell Health and Executive Director of Northwell Health Physician Partners, will give the inaugural lecture in the series at 6:45 a.m. in the M&T Auditorium in the Jacobs School at 955 Main Street. All students, residents, faculty, and community members are welcome. My mantra to the students, surgical trainees, and young faculty is, if you want to be the boss, you need to understand the boss, which would stand for the business of surgery. That's a very true statement.
Yes, it is. Our editorial cartoon, Pat?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just dozing here. Okay, it's from Steve Kelly from the Creators Syndicate. And it's Bernie Sanders and President Trump. And President Trump says to Bernie, "Obviously, Bernie, I'm not a racist, Nazi, homophobic misogynist." And in the second frame, he says, "Because if I were, you'd be defending me." As Bernie stands there with a sullen face because he stands by Nazi, racist, homophobic, and some misogynist Graham Plattner, who is running for office.
Do you want to read the Eileen Applebaum?
No, I don't think I.
Then I'll read that one.
You know, I'm just, I'm kind of in my own little world now.
It's okay with me. I'm all right.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. Okay, our first opinion, please, from Eileen Applebaum of Progressive Perspectives. Every worker nationwide deserves paid leave. Virginia just made history as the first southern state to provide workers with paid family and medical leave to tend to their serious medical needs, welcome a child into their lives, or care for an ill family member. The new legislation has been described as a win for the state's new Democratic governor, Abigail Spanberger, who was voted into office as part of last fall's blue wave elections. But the truth is that policies like paid leave are broadly popular with voters across the political spectrum. What just happened in Virginia should therefore serve as a template for other such efforts, as political leaders seek to win on bread and butter issues related to affordability. The United States, sadly, is one of the only nations in the world that does not guarantee employees even one paid day of parental or medical leave, leaving the matter to individual states. Virginia now joins 13 other states and the District of Columbia that have enacted such programs. Virginia's program will provide up to 12 weeks of benefits over a 12-month period beginning in 2028. Nearly all public-private sector employees, or 91%, are covered. The self-employed can opt in, receiving 80% of their average weekly net earnings. Employers and employees will contribute equally to a family and medical leave insurance trust fund that will pay these benefits, and workers have the right to return to a job with their employer at the end of the leave. This is good news for Virginians, but passing paid leave programs on one state at a time has made for slow progress on this issue nationwide. Since California enacted its program 23 years ago, paid family and medical leave is only available to about 34% of workers in the private sector. There is no question that these worker-friendly policies have clear benefits. A 2011 study that I co-authored surveyed workers and employers before and after implementation of California's paid family leave program. Excuse me. Unsurprisingly, it found positive effects of the program for working families, but the same was true for employers. Most reported that paid leave had either a positive effect or no noticeable effect on productivity, 89%, profitability performance, 91%, turnover, 96%, and employee morale, 99%. So what is stopping us from enacting paid leave everywhere? It isn't public opinion. Recent polling shows that a national paid family and medical leave program is supported by more than 3/4 or 76% of Americans. Even a clear majority of Republicans, 62%, agree that Congress should get to work on this. In fact, there are many issues where the public shows support for what are usually considered to be progressive or left-leaning ideas. As the Center for Economic and Policy Research shows in its Majority Agenda Compendium, there are a range of issues, from healthcare to affordable housing to fair scheduling laws, where bold policy solutions are favored overwhelmingly by Americans. Just about everyone will face a medical crisis or need that will require them to take time off from work at some point in their working lives. A national program that guarantees pay during a family or medical leave and a right to return to a job is long overdue. Virginia points the way to such a program.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 29 minutes past the hour, and we will go to our next opinion piece by Jackie Collins from the Los Angeles Times. Democrats, less navel-gazing and more focusing on the future. Could there be a better metaphor for the plight of the out-of-power Democratic Party than the fact that it's now a week into debating how the party screwed up an autopsy about how the party screwed up the 2024 presidential election? Or that the Democratic National Committee's forced release of that 2024 autopsy last month, after its leak to CNN, produced headlines that all but overshadowed news of the much more consequential malpractice on the Republican side, including President Trump's continued humiliation in his war against Iran and congressional Republicans' mutiny over his billion-dollar ballroom, his $1.8 billion slush fund to reward January 6 insurrectionists and other allies, and his retribution against fellow elected Republicans? First, to dispense with the autopsy. As former Obama strategist and podcaster Dan Pfeiffer titled his recent newsletter, Ken Martin Has to Go. Martin, the DNC chair, is right to promote a 50-state strategy that funds party organizations in red states as well as blue ones. He wisely refuses to lead a political party that forfeits half the nation. Yes, that financing is a burden when donors aren't ponying up amid the months-long controversy over the draft autopsy that Martin bottled up. But no party easily raises money when it doesn't hold the White House or Congress. Still, Martin alone bears the responsibility for the huge embarrassment of the so-called after-action report. He promised immediately after his selection as chair 16 months ago to produce and publicize it. He chose a crony to produce it, then failed to monitor the effort to realize how woefully the draft was following short. In 192 pages, it lacked a conclusion and didn't mention Joe Biden's age and evident feebleness, the decisive issues of Israel and Gaza, or why 11th hour nominee Vice President Kamala Harris lost the votes of so many Black and Latino men. Once he realized the draft was a disaster late last year, Martin declined to take remedial action or start over. Rather than fess up, he remained silent about the draft's many shortcomings and simply reneged on his promise to release a report, claiming it was time to focus on the 2026 and 28 elections. So now the hapless Democrats are months closer to the midterms, and they're obsessing and spitting furious over an autopsy that would shame a small-town coroner's office. If you can't do the small things, you can't do the big things, Pfeiffer concluded of Martin's stewardship. And the DNC has to do big things, including deciding on a calendar, procedures and debates for the 2028 presidential primaries that will produce the party's pick for its post-Trump future. It hosts the nominating convention, but generally its job of supporting the political apparatus to win elections is one that's in the background. For the National Committee to let itself become the story, the one that screams weak and hapless, is inexcusable. Whether the Democratic Party gets rid of Martin or not, its leaders, not just those at the DNC, have to show that they have the vision to see clearly that the advantage Democrats have in this midterm election year has next to nothing to do with their party's appeal, but comes in spite of their unpopularity and thanks instead to Trump's and Republicans' own. Sure, Democrats can win some elections in the short term as voters send a message to the Republicans in power. But the party can't build a political future by running against a man who's a lame duck. The Republicans' challenge is all too obvious. The party's popularity in polls is lower than Trump's and no better than the Republican Party's. The nonpartisan Pew Research Center reported this month that 59% of American adults have an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party, a statistically insignificant percentage point above the Republican Party's unfavorable measure. A Quinnipiac University poll conducted at mid-month had Trump's job approval rating at a new low of 34% among registered voters, but just 20% approved of how Democrats in Congress were performing, 7 percentage points below Congressional Republicans' rating. Clearly, Democrats' number one job is to redefine themselves. Yes, they are unfairly tagged in many voters' minds with holding as their top priorities support for transgender rights in school sports, defunding police, open borders, and high spending. Fiscal fecklessness more adaptly describes Trump and his party. But the negative labeling is due in no small part to Democrats' weakness in countering Republicans' attacks and their haplessness in telegraphing alternative, positive messages of what they stand for. More fairly, the Democratic Party is seen as too distracted by fringe culture war issues such as transgender teens in girls' sports and too cowed by identity groups, the pro-Israel lobby, teachers' unions, immigrants' rights groups, and leftist activists. In fact, more voters consistently support Democrats' positions on many issues, notably health care, than they do Republicans. Trump, meanwhile, is squandering his party's leads on issues including the economy and immigration. Yet former Representative Barney Frank of Massachusetts, himself a proud liberal Democrat, felt strongly enough that Democrats were allowing themselves to be defined by their left, playing into Republicans' hands, that he literally turned his dying words into a constructive warning, with hospice interviews in the weeks before he died on May 19th. Get rid of the perception that we have allowed to grow, that the entire Democratic Party is committed to a series of very drastic social reconstructions that go beyond the politically acceptable, Frank told the New York Times reporter. The good news for Democrats is that they have a deep bench of politicians who reflect Frank's prescription, pragmatism, and willingness to support incremental progress. Forget 2024. Win in 2026. Then let the contest to decide the 2028 presidential nomination and define the party begin.
And our final opinion comes from Elizabeth Shackelford of the Chicago Tribune. I saw the 2014 Ebola response. We're paying for aid cuts today. In September 2014, I was working as a watch officer in the State Department's Operations Center. This meant I had a front row seat to the expansive U.S. government response to the Ebola epidemic that rocked West Africa that year. It was the biggest outbreak of Ebola so far, with more than 11,000 deaths reported. I was on the watch floor when we found out that an American doctor working on the response had contracted the disease in Sierra Leone, and the U.S. government was arranging to evacuate him back to the United States for treatment. That doctor happened to be my friend, Ian Crozier. He would not have survived without the specialized care and facilities he was able to access at home. As the current Ebola epidemic unfolds, I can't help but wonder what might have happened to him and the world if the United States had a different leadership then. In a break with past practice, the current administration isn't even bringing affected Americans back home for treatment. The withdrawal from the World Health Organization during the second administration of President Trump's massive cuts to foreign aid, dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, our country's flagship foreign assistance agency, and gutting of global health staff at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have put us at the world at far greater risk from epidemics like this. U.S. foreign aid funded detection and containment capabilities through community health workers in the region. It funded healthcare infrastructure such as clinics, labs, and testing facilities, and basic supplies such as gloves, masks, and other essential protection for healthcare workers. It funded non-governmental organizations that worked in remote places to monitor, treat, and manage illness. When U.S. aid was dismantled, much of the global healthcare infrastructure across Africa died with it. By withdrawing our funding, expertise, and participation from the WHO, The United States also severely eroded the capacity of the global institution best positioned to respond to epidemics. Even this administration seemed to understand that Ebola prevention should be an American first priority. During a cabinet meeting last year, Elon Musk noted that Ebola prevention funding was accidentally canceled by his so-called Department of Government Efficiency. But that mistake was not, in fact, corrected. Funding for healthcare response in the region was gutted, and many experts in high-risk outbreaks were pushed out of the government. In 2014, the U.S. response involved billions of dollars, the deployment of nearly 200 U.S. aid and the CDC experts, and 1,800 Defense Department personnel. The U.S. government worked closely with the WHO and countries across the affected region and the world. The lessons learned should have positioned the world to respond better in this crisis today. Instead, the global response has been delayed and hobbled. About 900 suspected cases and 220 suspected deaths have been tracked so far. This epidemic faces another serious complications. No approved vaccines or therapeutic treatments exist yet for this Ebola strain, and its long incubation period facilitates the spread, since people who appear healthy can carry it longer and farther without detection. The front lines of the epidemic are also the front lines of a war, making it harder to treat, and the region's porous borders make it harder to contain. The rapid influx of new resources and officials in a region raised deep suspicion in the local population, and that suspicion itself remains an obstacle to treatment and containment of the disease. This outbreak has spread from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Uganda, and officials fear it may have already traveled beyond those two, since 8 countries border the affected region. The Africa CDC is doing its best to organize a robust response, but its aim to raise $319 million seems paltry compared with what similar outbreaks have needed in the past. But the past was very different environment for global healthcare. The question is whether this outbreak will serve as a warning that triggers the U.S. government to reinvest in global health while it still can, or if that warning will come too late.
And our health article, a discount dilemma. 5 things to consider when pharmacy offers coupon for medication. When you go to the pharmacy, you might be offered a coupon on your prescription drugs. While it may sound like a great deal, the decision to accept it is complicated. Even as prescription drug costs rise, patients with commercial insurance slowed their use of manufactured sponsored drug coupons in recent years, according to a study of the Journal of the American Medical Association published on April 6th. These are not the same as discount card services from companies like GoodRx, which negotiate lower bulk pricing for prescription drugs, then pass those savings along to consumers. Drug manufacturers distribute copay coupon cards to consumers to keep their drugs competitive by offering patients short-term savings. Consumers pay less out of pocket, often for brand name drugs. This encourages patients to use the brand name version, even when a cheaper generic version might be available. Some insurers say this unfairly puts them on the hook for pricier drugs. They say monthly premiums are higher as a result, punishing consumers and patients alike. Should you use manufacturer-sponsored drug coupons? It depends. What if you don't have insurance? If you are uninsured, using a coupon can be a great way to save money, especially if there is no generic version of the drug. TrumpRx is a new federally funded initiative that acts as a prescription drug coupon dashboard for patients. Some of the coupons come from manufacturers while others do not. Not every drug has a coupon offer. Michelle Long, a senior policy manager at KFF who studies patient and consumer protections, said people without insurance can save money by using Trump Rx or manufacturer coupons. Still, she said, Trump Rx lists only about 85 drugs. It is important to note drug coupons have limitations and guidelines, and they don't last forever. What if you do have insurance? If the drug isn't covered by your commercial health insurance plan, or if you intend to pay cash, the coupon may be the way to go. Insurance coverage varies for certain kinds of drugs, such as GLP-1 obesity drugs. The study found coupon use by commercial insurance holders on obesity drugs dropped from 54% of prescriptions in 2017 to only 2.5% in 2024, though use of the drugs rose. So, Yan Kang, the study's main contributor, who is an assistant professor of health management and policy at Georgetown University, said this reflects the growing number of patients paying cash for the drugs as prices decline, along with insurers' reluctance to cover them and manufacturers shifting focus from coupon distribution to marketing campaigns. What if you expect high medical costs? If you have insurance and anticipate meeting your deductible for the year, consider using a coupon. However, your insurer likely won't count the value of the coupon toward your deductible. Only use a coupon if there is no generic option available and you know you'd otherwise hit your deductible. What if you have a plan but low costs? The answer is almost always don't use the coupon. If the drug is covered by your insurance, using coupons will put you at risk for higher indirect costs. It's also often more advantageous to spend toward your deductible. Watch out for copay adjustment programs that insurers use to discourage use of coupons. They come in two common forms. Copay accumulators allow the use of drug coupons up to their full value, but the amount of the coupon won't count toward patients' deductibles or out-of-pocket maximums, making it harder to reach the threshold at which insurers will pitch in on prescriptions and other medical care. It can also mean a patient eventually will pay the full cost of the drug because they haven't yet met their annual deductible. Copay maximizers, which also prevent the coupon value from counting toward deductibles, use a third party to adjust patients' copayments over the course of a year to match the amount of the manufacturer's coupons. What if you're on Medicaid or Medicare? Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries are prohibited from using manufacturer-sponsored coupons. A federal kickback law makes it illegal to give someone anything of value to influence their decision to purchase something that will ultimately be paid for by the federal health care program. The law also prevents remuneration, which includes waiving copays and charging less than fair market value for a product. Some states, notably California and Massachusetts, prohibit or limit the use of manufactured drug coupons when a generic version of the drug is available.
Retailers now confront a consumer stress test. With the Iran war stretching into its fourth month, U.S. retail companies that have so far banked on a resilient consumer could face a tougher road ahead as rising gas prices and economic pain gradually erode the buffer. Results from Dollar Tree, Walmart, Gap, and others in the past few weeks show that consumers are still spending, but in an increasingly selective way, prioritizing essential upgrades and value-driven purchases while pulling back on discretionary items. The strain on retailers is starting to show more clearly as the current earnings season draws to a close. Core lower-income customers are cutting back on expenses, including food. Discount retailer Dollar General CFO stated during an earnings call on Tuesday. Dollar stores are increasingly pulling in shoppers earning over $100,000 annually who are trading down. U.S. consumer confidence eased slightly in May as inflation concerns tied to the Middle East conflict and higher fuel costs offset improving labor market sentiment. So far, consumers aren't pulling back significantly, but they are clearly shifting behavior, said a Vice President of Research and Marketing Intelligence at Consumer Edge.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Beamish, Robert C. Cook, David D. Consolacion L. Ni Lopez. Farrell, Rosemary L. Ni Guida. Casper, Stephen P. McGuire, Gloria M. Ni Yurge. Melly Quigliata, Sharon A. Partridge, Mary Jane Ni Giblin. Also, Peebo Bryson, a Grammy winner R&B singer known for his duets from Disney classics Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, has died. He was 75. He was a fixture on the R&B scene for decades, scoring with such hits as Tonight I Celebrate My Love and If Ever You're in My Arms Again. Also, Kelly Lee Curtis, known for The Sentinel, Trading Places, and other television and movie roles, has died. She was 69. Kelly Lee was the eldest daughter of Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, born 2 years before Jamie Lee. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And now let us see what the royal stars are predicting for us. Happy birthday for Thursday, June 4th. You are determined, committed, and inspiring. Humanitarian concerns matter to you. This is a slower-paced year. Take time to rejuvenate your energy and outlook. Focus on business and personal relationships, and choose to be with people who are kind, helpful, and have your back. Stars, remember, have a daily significance of what kind of day you'll have. 5 being dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And still today, after all these years, never seen a 1. Thank goodness. Nobody has a difficult day. All right. Aries, a 4-star day. This is an interesting day. You have strong feelings about something which you will no doubt share with a friend or a group. Tonight, be friendly. Taurus, a 3-star day, which is average. A surprise interaction with the police, a parent, or a boss, or anyone in authority might catch you off guard today. Tonight, you're admired. Gemini, a 4-star day, which is positive. Steer clear of controversial subjects today because people are obsessed with their opinions, which might lead to a power struggle. Tonight, learn and explore. Cancer, a 3-star average day. Double-check banking details. Something unexpected could impact your wealth or something to do with shared property. Tonight, check your finances. Leo, a 4-star day, which is positive. Today you might attract someone to you who has strong opinions. Tonight, be reasonable and cooperative. Virgo, it's a 3-star day, which is average. Be careful you don't come on too strong with work colleagues. Today, your enthusiasm to make improvements. Tonight, work to get better organized. Libra, a 4-star day, which is positive. A romantic interest might suddenly develop today, something out of the blue. Furthermore, it's passionate and irresistible. Tonight, socialize.
Ooh, can I become a Libra?
Sounds good. All right. Scorpio, a 3-star day, which is average. Family discussions are intense today because someone really wants their way. It could relate to a sudden decision about shared property or debt. Tonight, rest at home. Sagittarius, a 4-star day, which is positive. You might get on your high horse today because you are convinced about something and you have very strong feelings about it. Tonight, discussions. Capricorn, a 3-star average day. Something might come up related to your job or something else that is unexpected, which causes you to have strong opinions about finances. Tonight, check your money. Aquarius, a 4-star or positive day. You have strong feelings today about something that is related to a social outing, a sports event, or something to do with the arts. Tonight, you win. And Pisces, a 3-star average day. Something going on behind the scenes, possibly related to home and family, might catch you off guard today. Tonight, privacy.
And we have a couple events today in history. In 1919, Congress gave women the right to vote when it adopted the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. In 1937, Oklahoma grocer Sylvan Goldman publicly introduced the world's first shopping cart, an invention of his that allowed shoppers to purchase more than traditional hand-carry baskets. In 1946, President Harry Truman signed into law the National School Lunch Act, which provides healthy lunches for children at schools in the United States each day at no cost or a low cost. And in 1984, rock singer-guitarist Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band released their best-selling Born in the USA album. That's kind of cool. I like the shopping cart one.
Yeah, well, there's, after the women were given the right to vote, they could go.
They could go shopping with a bigger cart.
With a bigger cart. my humor. Only you understand.
Trump to attend NATO summit. President Trump will attend the NATO meeting of heads of state that is taking place in Turkey in July, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Wednesday. While American presidents almost always attend NATO summits, given Washington is the leader of the alliance, questions were raised about Trump's attendance this year as he repeatedly expressed his anger with NATO over what he described as its reluctance to help the United States with the war in Iran. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Thursday, June 4th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ruth Novotniak.
and Pat Lamont, and let's see what's happening locally. Kaleidah's patient portal system is a success so far. For weeks and weeks, Kaleida health providers filtered into one of the health system's corporate locations in Larkinville to be trained on how to use new electronic health record. Now, after more than a year of planning and countless trainings in recent months, the new streamlined system, which replaced 13 different instances of electronic health records, is live. It's a major change, a positive one for community, Kaleida believes. For more than 13,000 Kaleida employees and more than 1 million patients across Western New York. It also represents a state-supported project that is a significant investment, likely somewhere in the tens of millions of dollars. The system-wide patient record platform officially launched Saturday, which is why Kaleida patients received an email prompting them to activate MyChart, which is the patient portal run by software company Epic Systems. Through MyChart, patients will be able to view test results, schedule appointments, pay bills, order prescription refills, check in for appointments, and message their care teams. Kaleida has been touting the benefits of a transition to Epic for more than a year. All Kaleida organizations, including General Physician, Olean General Hospital, Olean Medical Group, outpatient departments in Bradford, inside the former Bradford Regional Medical Center building, Brooks, TLC Hospital System, Lake Erie Medical Services, and Cuba Memorial Hospital use one connected health record platform. Kaleida spokesperson Jacqueline Betts said the change to a new health record affects 1.4 million patients across all entities that went live with Epic. She said patients should download MyChart if they are a patient at any of the organizations that went live. The old patient portals no longer work and don't automatically transfer to MyChart, she added. A few days before the transition, Beth said Kaleida is seeing meaningful workflow questions and refinement needs, not major systemic issues. With the implementation, Kaleida anticipated there could be issues after launch and staff 24/7 command centers across its system. Our teams worked very hard over the last 18 months to anticipate, plan for, and avoid preventable challenges during and after go live, she said. For patients, the hope is that the new health record will mean fewer patient portals and fewer usernames or passwords, fewer repeated tests, and hopefully less repeating the same information to different providers as patients navigate their way through the healthcare system. According to Kaleida, the new patient record system should improve communication between its care teams, enhance patient safety through standardized documentation, and reduce duplication, streamline workflows to allow clinicians to spend more time with patients, and improve patient experience. This new system represents a transformational step forward for our organization and the communities we serve, said Chief Information Officer Courtney Starnes said in a news release. By bringing all patient information into one secure, connected platform, we're empowering our care teams with the tools they need to deliver safer, faster, and more coordinated care. Close Kaleida partners, Erie County Medical Center, UBMD Physicians Group, will go live with Epic later this year. Many area patients are likely already familiar with Epic and MyChart platform because Catholic Health invested $135 million several years ago to convert to Epic. More than 40% of U.S. hospitals use Epic. What remains unclear is the total cost of the investment in Epic. In January 2025, Governor Kathy Hochul's office announced transformative investments in several healthcare partnerships. One of those recipients was Kaleida, which planned to use an undisclosed amount of state money to build a new Brooks Medical Memorial Hospital in Fredonia, deepen its bonds with Olean General Hospital and Bertrand Chaffee Hospital in Springville, and modernize its electronic medical record system. We want to thank Governor Kathy Hochul and her administration for their commitment to health care and reinforcing our vision of unifying Western New York onto one medical system, said Kaleida President Don Boyd. While the total award amount to Kaleida remains unclear, the funding included $74 million in state grants for the $223 million Brooks Memorial Hospital being built in Fredonia. Kaleida also sought $125 million in housing and urban development financing through Key Bank, etc. The Buffalo News on June 13, 2025, filed a records request with the State Health Department for a copy of the award letter to Kaleida for the project. The state has extended its response to that request several times and has yet to provide the records. Kaleida Health is the largest health system in Western New York and employs more than 13,000 people.
Pro soccer in Buffalo gets benched for another year. The group that wants to bring a professional soccer club to Buffalo is putting off the start of the franchise for at least another year. In a letter to its early season ticket holders, Peter Marlett, president of the Buffalo Pro Soccer, told fans the United Soccer League Championship Expansion Club it hopes to bring to Buffalo won't start play in 2027. It is a second year-long delay for the potential team. Buffalo Pro Soccer has already delayed plans for the team by a year after the first stadium site chosen in the city's Valley neighborhood fell through in the summer after opposition from a chemical manufacturing plant next door drew attention to earlier complaints about fumes and odors there. But since then, the group has not lined up a new place to play and was running out of time to be ready for the 27 season. Buffalo Pro Soccer said it has assembled a committed ownership group, which Marlett says it will announce soon. He said the group has also held advanced conversations to finalize a site for the future home stadium, but the process continues to take time. A few years since its inception, Buffalo Pro Soccer has a presence in Buffalo through youth programming and a team of ambassadors spreading the word about pro soccer in Buffalo. It has not been able to finalize a stadium site yet, though. The group is adding key people to its staff and continues to hire. Buffalo Pro Soccer is growing its youth programming. It has teamed up with Silo City to host free clinics, helping bring attention to the upcoming FIFA World Cup. The group also holds monthly trivia nights and continues to sell season tickets to founding members. But not yet having a decision on a stadium, left only 9 months for Marlett to get a modular constructed stadium built somewhere in the city to host the USL franchise starting March 27th. The group still has not settled on a site for a new stadium, let alone receive the city approvals it needs to build it. It would need at minimum 8 months to build a stadium with prefabricated modular pieces. Buffalo Pro Soccer last held a community town hall where the press was provided access in October. However, the group has been hiring part-time employees as part of a street team working to build momentum for pro soccer in Buffalo. The only site under construction is a downtown location on the parking lots of the former Buffalo News Building and HSBC atrium between KeyBank Center and Salem Field and next to Lecom Harbor Center. That site, which would create more of a stadium district downtown, has probably been the most intriguing for city planners and officials. It is also around public transit and plenty of parking, as well as restaurant and entertainment options. It was originally the top choice of Marlett, but the stadium would have cost $40 million to build and initially operate. That meant the group needed state funds to pay for about half of it. Buffalo Pro Soccer made an aggressive push but could not secure the state funding it needed. Marlette has said with additional investors now in the fold, public funds may not be needed to make that idea a reality. He also has said that there are even more stakeholders in the mix, although they have not been identified. How many depends on which site is chosen. He has also been looking at another unidentified Buffalo location that was on the team's short list in the first time around, and considering a few other locations, but he has said from the beginning that he prefers a site in the city. Since the announcement in July that Buffalo Pro Soccer would be scrapping its first choice to play in the new $10 million stadium on the former Medaille University Athletic Complex, located on Elk Street next to the chemical plant, Marlette has been trying to identify a final site for the club while also trying to raise funding from additional investors. He said he still plans to build a stadium with prefabricated modular pieces. Building a modular stadium speeds up construction, reduces the cost, and allows for some design adjustments throughout the process. Still, he has said he would like to allow for up to a year to get the project done. Buffalo Pro Soccer could have formed the expansion team for the 2027 season and played at another site for a year while the stadium is being finished, but Marlette has repeatedly said he would prefer not to start in a temporary location.
Tonawanda still waits to move on from plant. The coal-fired power plants in Dunkirk and the town of Tonawanda, both owned by NRG Energy, closed 2 months apart in 2016. 10 years later, the Dunkirk generating station is now in the hands of a new owner following its sale to a Texas-based developer. 50 miles to the north, NRG retains ownership of its former Huntley power plant to the exasperation of town of Tonawanda officials who for a decade have unsuccessfully pushed the energy company to make way for the revival of the key riverfront property. I'm very happy for the residents of Dunkirk that they are able to now move on and that the local officials can work with the new owner to do something suitable for that property. Tonawanda Supervisor John Flynn said in an interview, and I look forward to the day when we here in Tonawanda can eventually take over that site and then transfer it to a developer in the future who's going to make our Huntley Plaid the pride and joy of the North Towns. Flynn last month took over as town supervisor from Joseph Eminger, whose 10-year term overlapped with the power plant's closing and the long-standing efforts to redevelop the River Road parcel. Flynn said the fact Tonawanda is finally making progress on its legal fight to take control of the Huntley plant from NRG limits the aggravation the town feels in seeing the Dunkirk site sell first. Town officials expect to take title to the property by the end of the summer, and the supervisor said paving the way for Tonawanda to seek reuse proposals from private developers. I think there would have to be more frustration years ago when we were in the midst of the eminent domain proceedings, Flynn said Monday. But now, quite frankly, the eminent domain proceedings from a legal standpoint are over. We have been successful. NRG Energy closed its Dunkirk power plant in January 2016 and shuttered its Huntley plant in Tonawanda 2 months later. Both coal-fired generating stations were major sources of property tax revenue for their respective communities. Tonawanda officials initially expressed optimism that redevelopment of the site would move fairly quickly. However, as time passed, Eminger and other town officials said they began to doubt NRG's willingness to give up control of the property. Town leaders said NRG continued making millions of dollars by selling raw Niagara River water to neighboring industries. NRG previously said that raw water profits played no role in its handling of the Huntley property. As the years passed without progress on the sale, Tonawanda launched an effort to take over the property through eminent domain, a legal process that allows governments to take control of private land. The government must do so for a public benefit and must pay the owner a fair value for the property. The town withdrew its first eminent domain filing and NRG's request, then renewed its legal fight as redevelopment efforts led by the company stalled. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will move on to sports. And first we'll go to the Bills. Run through people. Travis Clayton was the last one off the practice field Tuesday. The Buffalo Bills' third-year veteran had a good reason for putting in extra time. Clayton is attempting to make the switch from offensive tackle to defensive line, and Tuesday's practice was just the second day he ever spent at this new position. I love O-line, but I just think at the moment with what I feel I can bring to the team along the defensive line, it will be a bigger impact than what I can bring to the team on the O-line, Clayton told Buffalo News after practice. It's been 2 great days so far. Clayton, 25, is a former 7th-round draft pick of the Bills in 2024, who came to the team via the NFL's International Player Pathway, a program designed to give athletes outside the U.S. and Canada a chance at playing in the league. He grew up in Basingstoke, about 50 miles southwest of London, playing tennis, soccer, rugby, boxing, rowing, and gymnastics. He didn't put on football pads for the first time until after the Bills drafted him. A shoulder injury suffered as a rookie led him to spending his first pro season on injured reserve. He spent all last year on Buffalo's practice squad. He's an exceptional athlete, a lot of talent, rugby player still learning the game. Bills general manager and president of football operations Brandon Beane told the News after Tuesday's practice. He had an injury in the first year, kind of lost out to those reps. It's not that we gave up on him as tackle, but he's still learning the game. I think he's seen a piece of the defense and is like, Man, I'm 350 pounds. I'm athletic. I want to know if maybe that's even better for me. I think he feels like it'd give him a better shot to earn the spot on the club. Clayton is 6'7" and listed on the Bills roster as 303 pounds. But as Bean pointed out, he's actually closer to 350. Oh boy, that's a jump.
That's a bit of change.
Does it really matter? For a man that size, he moves remarkably well. The Bills recently conducted some competitive drills as part of their organized team activities. One of those was a shuttle run that showed off Clayton's speed and change of direction ability. His performance in that drill led to the player and coaching staff agreeing that it might be worth a shot to see what he can do on the defensive side. I've been learning from the vets. Right now it feels good. It's kind of similar to rugby, as in getting out of your stance, he said. You're on the balls of your feet, a little bit different than O-line, of course. It's a violent position. I'm looking forward to getting some reps out there with the team for sure. The Bills will finish their 10 OTA practices this week, then hold a 3-day mandatory minicamp next week before taking summer break ahead of the start of training camp in late July. That stretch will allow Clayton some valuable time to continue working on the finer points of defensive line play. To do that, he plans to return to London and work with Efe Obada, another IPP participant who played 7 NFL seasons, including the 2021 campaign in Buffalo. Obada appeared in 80 NFL games, with 3 NFL teams making 15 career sacks. He most recently was with the Washington Commanders from 2022 to 2024. Well, sounds like he's going to be a good addition. Hope he stays injury-free.
I agree. All-Star Game adopting international format. This is from the Newswire services. The NHL is taking cues from the success of the Four Nations Face-Off and Winter Olympics tournaments, introducing an international format to next year's All-Star Game. The 2027 All-Star Game will feature players divided into 5 teams representing Canada, the United States, Sweden, Finland, and World, which will feature players from all other nations. Those sides will play a round-robin tournament of 3-on-3 hockey with 5-minute games. After all 10 games, the teams with the best records will play a 10-minute final, and the winners will earn $2 million. All-Star Weekend will be held at the New York Islanders UBS Arena in Elmont, New York, which was supposed to host the event in 2026 before it was altered and ultimately scrapped in favor of a break purely for the Winter Olympics. We're extremely excited to bring this event to New York, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said Tuesday in Raleigh, North Carolina, in his annual State of the League address. I think the format we've created will be fun. It will be entertaining. It'll be great for the players and the fans. The U.S., Canada, Sweden, and Finland fielded teams in the first ever Four Nations Face-Off in 2025, which was seen as a success and gave hockey fans a taste of international competition a year before NHL players returned to the Olympics. The league is following the NBA in trying to introduce an international flair to the All-Star proceedings. For the first time in February, 2 teams of American players and 1 made up of international players played a round-robin in place of the NBA's traditional All-Star game. However, Bettman didn't indicate that the NHL drew inspiration from basketball, saying we haven't had some of the issues that some of the other leagues have had. Yes, we even blew ourselves up with the Four Nations by taking it to a whole new level, but there was never anything wrong with the All-Star format that we've been using for the past few years. And we think that we've laid out to you today, what we laid out to you today is going to be fun and entertaining, and that's really what it's all about. The league is also changing up the All-Star skills competition in an effort to put younger players in the spotlight. 10 players 25 years old or younger will be selected to compete across multiple events. They will be required to compete in 4 of the following: fastest skater, hardest shot, passing challenge, one-timers, sticky handling, and accuracy shooting. Based on the points they earned for their performances, the 4 top players will head to a shootout against one of 4 All-Star goalies. The 2 top players in the shootout then finish with a head-to-head race in the obstacle course. The skills competition winner will take home $1 million. That's really a kind of a cool thing there. Okay, now we'll go on to the MLB.
Yep. The Max Slug's first MLB homer for Marlins. Williamsville East product Joe Mack, who received a first call-up to the Miami Marlins on May 4th, belted the first home run of his MLB career Tuesday night in the Marlins' 7-3 win over the Washington Nationals in D.C.'s Nationals Park. Mack, a 23-year-old catcher, connected for a 2-run shot in the top of the 5th inning with a 410-foot drive to deep right center off veteran Washington right-hander Miles Mikolas. It felt great, Mack told MLB.com after the game. I didn't know that it was gone as soon as I hit it, but I knew I got it pretty good. I was just running around the bases, kind of blacked out a little bit, but just smiling with joy, so it was really a cool experience. The home run was the first hit of the game for either team and broke a scoreless tie. It also set the Marlins off on a back-to-back home runs by Mack designed hitter Heriberto Hernandez and former Buffalo Bisons infielder Otto Lopez that produced the 4-0 lead. It was just the 3rd time in the Marlins' 34-year history that 3 straight batters had gone deep in the game. That was awesome, Mack said. I've gone back-to-back with another teammate, but not back-to-back, so that was pretty good. Glad I could lead it off. For Joe Mack to get his first career homer in a big spot like that, good for him and certainly good for us, said Miami manager Clayton McCullough said. Also per MLB.com, and for Burton Otto to follow up right away, it's certainly a big boost. Mack went 1 for 3 in the game with 3 RBIs, getting his third one of the night on a sacrifice bunt in the 3-run ninth. He entered Wednesday's play battling .214 with 9 RBIs for the Marlins, with 3 doubles among his 15 hits. He has 24 strikeouts in 70 at-bat. And I'll give you the standings for the leaders in the American League East. Tampa Bay leading 36 wins, 23 losses. New York second with 36 wins and 24 losses. In the Central American League Division, Cleveland with 35 wins and 24 losses. Chicago second with 32 wins and 29 losses. In the American League West, Seattle first with 33 wins and 29 losses, and Texas in second place with 30 wins and 31 losses. In the National League, in the East, Atlanta is leading with 41 wins and 20 losses. Philadelphia second with 31 wins and 29 losses. In the National Central League, Milwaukee is leading with 37 wins and 21 losses. Pittsburgh is second with 33 wins and 28 losses. And the National League West, Los Angeles is in first place with 39 wins and 22 losses, and San Diego is second with 32 wins and 27 losses.
Tree and Acorns. Mitch Johnson, Mike Brown draw on Greg Popovich's lessons. This is a Newswire news service article. As the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks prepare to clash in the NBA Finals, the shadow of a league legend looms large over both teams' benches. Both Spurs coach Mitch Johnson and New York coach Mike Brown spent formative time learning on the staff of retired coach Greg Popovich, the Basketball Hall of Famer who led San Antonio to 5 NBA titles. Brown served under Popovich from 2000 to 2003 and played a key coaching role in helping the franchise win the 2003 NBA Finals over the New Jersey Nets. Brown and Popovich even coached a first-grade 6-man flag football team together during that stint, blowing away the competition. "We were awesome," Brown said Tuesday. "Pop was offensive coordinator. I was defensive coordinator. We actually dominated that league." Brown said he still adheres to many of the principles he learned from Popovich, honed in the practice gym and on the Spurs bench next to his Hall of Fame mentor. "The biggest thing to learn is just stay the course, keep trying to grow, and keep trying to learn." Johnson has spent more time in the Spurs organization, starting as an assistant for the team's G League affiliate in Austin, before moving up to San Antonio in 2019 as an assistant. Johnson took over as interim coach when Popovich suffered a stroke in early November 2024 and led the Spurs to a 32-45 record over the rest of the season. Johnson was then named head coach in May of 2025 when Popovich retired, and he guided the team to a monumental turnaround as San Antonio went 62-20 and finished second in the Western Conference. The Spurs outlasted the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder in a 7-game slugfest to earn the first trip to the finals since 2014. Popovich, currently the Spurs president of basketball operations, was there in the background, and sometimes in a more direct manner, to mentor Johnson in every step of the way. Pat?
Okay. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour. And let's see what kind of advice Eric is providing today. Dear Eric, my sister divorced her husband over 3 years ago and has had a man she has been having an affair with move into her married home roughly a year after the divorce. This man swears in front of my nephew. He's made comments about hitting my sister if she did or said something he disliked. He constantly makes belittling or offensive comments. I'm deeply concerned about the negative impact my nephew's toxic and narcissistic mother has had on him. It's exasperating to talk to my sister, as it usually ends up in a screaming match when things don't go her way. My mother is worse, and anything I say, I'm either villainized or completely dismissed. My mother backs my sister 110%, and anyone who stands in her path will be demonized, including my father. Currently, my father wants to evict this man from their house. My father bought it for my sister and her then husband, but it's still in my father's name. I'm worried where this all will lead and the impact it will have on the family dynamic. More importantly, my nephew. I just need advice on how to proceed, as I feel like this toxic family dynamic is likely to implode at some point. And signed, Family Peace. His response: if you fear your nephew is in danger, you need to contact Child Protective Services. I don't write this lightly, but if the threat of abuse is present, or if he's being mistreated in other ways, it's necessary to get support. Taking a step back, if your nephew is safe but nevertheless in an environment with people who are making unhealthy life choices, his relationship with you will be really important, as he'll need external support and role models. Invest your energies there rather than in trying to debate with your mother or inserting yourself into the conflict between your father and this man. There's a lot of tension here. There's a lot of unhappiness here. You can't change all of it, but you can be a steadying and positive presence for your nephew. Next letter. Dear Eric, I am 64 years old and have a wonderful son and daughter-in-law. They have 4-month-old twin boys and my 2-year-old beautiful autistic grandson. I worked in management in the corporate world for many years. As my children married and moved on into their own home, I provided them many things: appliances, a car, help with the down payment. They have always been very appreciative. They have never asked me for anything. I have always offered. We have a beautiful relationship. I retired early so I could babysit my 2-year-old grandson. I started when he was 4 months old. I cut down my bills greatly so I could do this. I live in a tiny home on the kids' property so we can have our separate lives. The problem is watching their children is very taxing. I really have no life. They've adjusted their schedule, so I only watch the children 7 hours a day instead of 12. But it's still too much. I have 5 years before these siblings go to school, and I feel so trapped. They cannot afford daycare, and even if they could, we don't want the children in daycare. They have no other relatives that can help. I've chosen to do this. I'm not sure what to. I have to some sort of life beyond my family. I'm so exhausted all the time. What should I do? Exhausted grandmother. His response: you've sacrificed and given a lot. It sounds like you were happy to do so, but it's still important that it's said. It's also important to acknowledge that help happily given can sometimes still be burdensome. To that end, talk to your son and daughter-in-law about what's going on with you and enlist them in helping to come up with a plan that works for everyone. It's absolutely okay to say, I've changed my life so that I could help. I still want to help, but it's not sustainable for me to keep helping in the way that I have been. and then talk to them about what an ideal situation would look like for you and ask to brainstorm together how that can be achieved. The solution may involve options that aren't their first choice, like a day or two in daycare per week, but still okay for healthy kids. That's okay right now. It sounds like you don't have any choice, or at least that's the way you feel. This isn't sustainable long term. You don't have to hide the reality of their lives from them. You're a part of their lives, and it will empower them and you to tell them what's going on before it becomes a crisis that threatens the whole arrangement.
And our first Life feature piece is an analysis article written by from Reuters. Interim peace deal would leave Iran battered, not broken. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran was meant to break the Islamic Republic. Instead, the warring sides are edging towards an interim agreement that would leave Iran battered but not broken. As the outlines of a potential deal emerge from sources familiar with the discussions, Iran looks to set to emerge economically shattered and with its military-industrial base severely degraded, but with hardline Revolutionary Guard dominance more firmly entrenched than before. Even if a memorandum on ending the war is agreed soon, it is less likely to be a lasting breakthrough than a temporary truce, diplomats, officials, and regional analysts say. They portray the likely outcome as a bargain designed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, ease economic pressure on global financial markets and Iran, and give U.S. President Donald Trump a political off-ramp while deferring the more intractable issues to a later date. There have been extraordinary tactical military successes and no fundamental strategic games, said Dennis Ross, a former senior U.S. diplomat. There is no file that has been closed. After U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran began on February 28th, Trump said they were aimed at eliminating imminent threats from Iran, citing its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, and urged Iranians to take control of their country. Under an emerging memorandum described to Reuters by sources familiar with the discussions, Iran would lift its effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, a major artery for global oil supplies, and secure financial relief through the release of frozen Iranian assets or the limited easing of sanctions. Iranian officials see a narrow deal as a way to buy time, unlock financial relief, and contain rising domestic risks over a deteriorating economy without addressing the more contentious issues. Trump, with one eye on midterms in November, wants language allowing him to claim progress on Iran's nuclear program, particularly its stockpile of highly enriched uranium needed to make an atomic bomb. The main drivers of the war would remain largely intact, with Iran refusing to abandon enrichment, Washington unwilling to offer Iran security guarantees, and Israel still determined to contain an adversary it sees as an existential threat. Iran calculates that it can deter future attacks only if it retains its missile arsenal, its regional network of allies, and the ability to disrupt Gulf energy flows. What Trump needs politically and what Iran is willing to give may look close, but the overlap is minimal, said a U.S. former diplomat and Iran expert. The model was to reach a deal now and kick all the tough issues into phase two. That is unlikely to follow. Trump looks set to be left with a short-term ceasefire and ambiguously worded commitment on highly enriched uranium in the Strait of Hormuz, still under Iranian control, according to two regional sources familiar with the discussions. Regional analysts say that even if the strait is opened, it is, as one analyst put it, basically going to be under Iranian control, regardless of how any fees for passage are structured. Washington has largely dropped its focus on ensuring Iran's ballistic missiles are dismantled, despite Israeli and Gulf concerns, they said. Obstacles to overcome include Iranian demands to link any agreement to Israel halting attacks on Hezbollah, and Trump's desire to get the optics right on the nuclear issue, the sources said. They said Trump has, in effect, accepted a linkage between Lebanon and the Strait, despite publicly denying it. He has pressed Israel to halt strikes on Beirut and its southern suburbs, wary of that any escalation in that conflict could derail efforts to secure a deal on the Strait. Iran sees the immediate release of about $12 billion in frozen assets as central to any deal and is unlikely to move ahead without it. David Schechner of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy said Trump wanted to avoid comparisons with the nuclear deal reached under former President Barack Obama in 2015, but releasing Iranian funds risked inviting exactly that charge. In 2018, Trump pulled the U.S. out of the 2015 deal, under which Iran agreed to curb on its nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. He said the deal failed to protect U.S. national security interests. Trump wants wording now that allows him to claim a win on Iran's nuclear program without an escalation of the war. I think you can end up with language that each side interprets their own way, and then the subsequent negotiations will be quite fraught. Any pause in the conflict is likely to leave the Revolutionary Guards emboldened, analysts say. Before they were the power behind the throne, and now they are the power. An interim deal is likely to leave Israel uneasy, with Iran's leaders casting the war in stark ideological terms and signaling that no deal will resolve the underlying conflict. For Israel and Iran, this chapter of the war may have ended, but the conflict is not ending.
Before I go to the next article, I just noticed attention seniors here in the paper. I'm going to read this to you now, and I'm going to repeat it at the end of the program because I think it's very important. Medicare Fraud Prevention Week is 6/1 through 6/5. Follow these 3 steps from the New York Senior Medicare Patrol. Prevent. Share your Medicare or Social Security number only with those you trust. Detect. Review your Medicare statements for mistakes and charges you don't recognize. And lastly, report. Trust your instincts and report any suspected fraud to the New York State Senior Medical Patrol, referred to as SMP. The phone number is 800-333-4374. That's 800-333-4374, or visit www.NYSENIOR.org to get involved. The reason I'm telling you this because a friend just told me he got his whatever report that you get, a timely report about your expenses. And he noticed that he's been paying one of his doctors a $30 copay, and in actuality, he should be paying him a $5 copay. When he noticed that, he called the doctor, and the doctor told him that they would be issuing a refund for the $25. So this is really important in view of everything we're hearing about Medicare fraud. So keep that in mind. I hope it's of interest, but I think it's important for us to be aware of it. That's all. Now we'll go to our article on Marineland whales. Could have some new homes in the U.S. Marineland's beluga whales, once in danger of being euthanized, are getting a new lease on life. Canada's federal government has endorsed a plan to split up roughly 30 whales and send them to Oceanograph Valencia in Spain, or one of 4 locations in the United States, including 2 SeaWorld facilities. The American destinations for some of the whales include the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta, Shed Aquarium in Chicago, and 2 SeaWorld facilities in San Diego and San Antonio, Texas. In recent years, amid serious backlash started by the whale documentary Blackfish, SeaWorld has pivoted away from animal performances and toward underwater viewing of marine mammals, more like an aquarium. The park's offerings focus on other entertainment, such as rides like roller coasters and programmed events. It is a criminal offense in Canada to use belugas and dolphins in shows for entertainment or for breeding. We expect the minister to uphold the spirit and intent of Canadian law and ensure that these animals won't be bred or forced to perform at any facilities to which they are sent, said Caitlin Mitchell, Director of Legal Advocacy at Animal Justice, an animal advocacy group. All 5 aquariums accepting whales are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and have decades of marine mammal care experience, said Paige Kale, a spokesperson for the Georgia Aquarium. The Ministry of Fisheries and Oceans Canada endorsed the rescue plan and concluded that this is the best interest of whales, Hale said in an email. No one has shared a timeline for the transfer, but the aquarium said they would be ready in a matter of weeks. But the entities are waiting for full authorization from all permitting agencies to move forward. This is critical as an important step involves an exam of each animal by a veterinarian credentialed in Canada to approve travel. They must also receive the necessary import permits from the U.S. and Spanish governments, which the aquariums are working on getting now. Fisheries Act authorizations will be issued closer to the date of transport, pending final animal health checks. DFO is coordinating with Canadian Border Services Agency, Health Canada, and other partners across the Government of Canada to ensure all requirements are met for a safe and timely transfer, said Ira Kedar, Press Secretary for the Office of Minister of Fisheries. The minister acknowledged help from the American Consortium and Canadian accredited zoos and aquariums, which have helped support the animals' welfare through the process. The federal government's final sign-off will be to issue export permits. Those permits are issued when it's in the best interest of the whales to leave the country, according to the Fisheries Act. When Marineland of Canada founder John Holler died in 2018, followed by his wife Marie in 2024, the Niagara Falls tourist attraction closed for good, leaving it with more than 30 whales in need of a new permanent home. Since then, they've been languishing in rundown tanks as activists, the Canadian government, and Marineland have tried to work out a plan for their long-term care. In January, the whales escaped euthanasia, something that had been threatened by the defunct Marineland, which said it didn't have the funds to care for the animals. The threat to put the whales down came after the Canadian government denied Marineland's request to have the marine mammals shipped to Shimalong Ocean Kingdom in China. In China, the whales would have gone back to performing for crowds, something that is now illegal by Canadian law. 2 years ago, the Whale Sanctuary Project in Nova Scotia held preliminary discussions with Marineland Canada about the possibility of transferring whales from their facility to the sanctuary. But when the Niagara Police charged Marineland with using whales and dolphins for entertainment purposes, Marineland broke off further discussions according to the sanctuary projects. Many activists are still pushing for the animals released to Nova Scotia Sanctuary, and the sanctuary has been fundraising for infrastructure that would allow it to host the whales.
Fired Pelley, heartbreaking changes at CBS, 60 Minutes. This is from USA Today. Longtime 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley is speaking out and saying farewell after he was suddenly fired from the flagship program. Pelley shared a lengthy and eye-opening statement on an Instagram account early Wednesday, which was reshared by the verified pages of his former colleagues. In the statement, shared across multiple images, he called changes at the news program and at CBS heartbreaking. There has never been anything in America like 60 Minutes, Pelley began. The Sunday tradition is the most successful program of any kind in history. The journalist lauded the news institution's successes over the nearly 60 years of its existence. Pelley, who has been with the network for 37 years and on 60 Minutes for over 20, said that when he and other colleagues began to take stewardship over from the Mike Wallace era, our responsibility was to expand energetically into a new age of media technology while preserving the values our audience expects. Now the new owner of our network is casting this legend aside. The anchor's exit comes after a heated staff meeting, as reported by the New York Times and Status on Monday, in which he accused network editor-in-chief Bari Weiss of murdering the news program and laid into its newly hired executive producer, former tech journalist Nick Bilton. Weiss, who took up the role in 2025, has long been criticized for recent changes being made at CBS, while parent company Paramount has been accused, as Pelley put it, of attempting to curry a moment of favor with the Trump administration. He added, "The waste is heartbreaking." Pelley reflected on recent mass firings at the network, which has been dubbed by the industry as Black Thursday, reportedly including longtime 60 Minutes senior leaders like executive producer Tanya Simon, executive editor Dragan Mihailovich, and correspondents Shireen Alfonsi and Cecilia Vega. In public statements, Alfonsi and Vega said their firings had political motivations. He said they were good people who were silenced and cruelly fired without cause. He continued, they stood for fairness against the forces of political bias. They stood for professionalism against chaos. Pelley made eye-opening allegations about recent happenings at the network, including that new management has instructed me to inject falsehoods and bias into a politically sensitive story. He added, I've been told to include assertions that are unverified. To date, in every case, I have managed to ignore these instructions or refuse them. He also said that of late, politicians have been invited to choose correspondents for interviews on the broadcast. He emphasized giving politicians control over 60-minute interviews is not how honest journalism is done. In one instance in which Pelley says new leadership wreaked havoc with incompetence and unprofessionalism, he alleged the news program came within 19 minutes of not airing at all. USA Today has reached out to CBS for comment. At 60 Minutes, we have fought harder than anyone knows to save the program that became an American icon, he wrote, before lamenting the collapse of values at the top. Concluding, Pelley thanked his colleagues, saying his heart was brimming with gratitude for their impact. I pray for a day when those people and their ideals are honored again, a day when sanity, competence, and courage return. CBS News terminated the correspondent, 68, after more than 2 decades at 60 Minutes. USA Today understands, leaving Pelley without severance or other benefits effective immediately. In a termination note obtained by USA Today, Bilton told Pelley that he was hoping they could pave a path forward together following the misconduct, but said, you made it clear that you are not interested in such a path. I didn't think they could do things without I think that was against the law,
A little
isn't
bit
it?
more behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think so.
Court asked to block mail-in voting rules. A leading civil rights group asked the federal court Wednesday to block the U.S. Postal Service's proposed restrictions on mail-in voting, arguing they violate a settlement that required expedited mail-in ballot handling. The Postal Service last week proposed a rule requiring states to provide lists of voters and adopt new balloting procedures before the mail agency would make deliveries. If states did not comply, the Postal Service would refuse to deliver the ballots. The regulations stem from President Trump's March executive order that aimed to severely restrict mail-in voting, which he has said, without proving evidence, is prone to fraud. And I'm going to give you that information once again. Attention seniors, Medicare Fraud Prevention Week. Although I would say just don't leave it to a week. If you're aware of any kind of Medicare fraud, call this number. If only share your Medicare or Social Security number with those you trust. Detect your Medicare statements for mistakes. Review your Medicare statements for mistakes and charges you don't recognize or that are over what you paid. Report your instincts and report any suspected fraud to the New York State Medicare Patrol, SMP. That number is 800-333-4374 or visit www.nysenior.org to get involved, to stay informed, and to report fraud. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, June 4th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call us at 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. Thank you for listening and enjoy this beautiful day.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability